I move to approve the agenda.
Second.
Okay, Eric moves, Kane seconds. Is there any discussion? All right, all those in favor of approving this week's agenda? All those opposed? Any abstaining? All right, with this, the agenda is approved. Now, if everyone can look at the minutes from last week. I can entertain a motion now to approve the
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, Greg motions, Eric seconds. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving last week's minutes? All those opposed? Any abstaining? And that, the motion passes. All right, let's go into reports. I don't have any reports.
I have two quick pieces. One was just as a quick follow-up. Shelby and I had a conversation after last week's meeting. And just as a reminder, again, when we have people coming and presenting, just to make sure that we're attentive and respectful. I know things may come up, or we may be trying to do calculations and things on our phone, but making sure that we're paying attention when people are presenting and not being distracted or having side conversations in those pieces. The other part, since this is our first business meeting, is just a reminder kind of the flow. And again, we have all supplemental funding requests coming up today. Next week we'll do the voting on it, but as a reminder, the structure will be each one of them will have 10 minutes to do their presentation, and then following the presentation, each will have 10 minutes of questions and answers. So they'll do their presentation, then they'll open it up to questions from the committee. And to be mindful again that we're asking all the pertinent questions that we may need, so that way we have the information already on hand prior to next week, since it is not a requirement for groups to be here, and we're really not supposed to be asking them questions on the deliberation week. So just to be mindful of that.
My only report is I just want to make sure everybody is aware of the running balance. So we are only seeing 6 requests today, but we do have a total of 13 in the queue as of today. So that was my only report.
So is there any public comment at this time? Seeing none, as there's no old business on the agenda, let's hop right into new business with supplemental funding request 1901 for swing cats.
Hi. Hi, everybody. My name is Caitlin Daniel. I'm the president of Swing Cats. I've been here off and on over the past couple of years. Ashley, who's our treasurer, could not make it with us today. She had a work ordeal with Halloween being here, helping all the kids in town. I'm here to ask for funding to help pay for Chris Peterson with our lessons again. I have asked for this in the past. As of right now, I'm asking for $1,500, and this is for $500 per quarter over the next 3 quarters, so this entire school year. As of last year, at the beginning of the year, I started asking for $700, and I've since gone down to $500. Because we have done that because we have started getting our income again as swing cats. We've started getting our numbers up again. Right now, we're at an average of 20, 25 people on our Mondays lessons and days. On Thursdays, it's a bit lower just because Mondays are our more popular days because we have the lessons. On Thursdays, we average about 15. So we still have decent numbers. As it's broken down, it's $211.05 for the 73.5-mile commute from Sela, and then the 2-hour DJ dance that we do on Mondays after the lessons, and then both equipment for Monday and on Thursdays is broken down to $50.10. So that's how it adds up to $500 per quarter. So we are still trying to reduce this price down to ask for less and less. As of this year, though, we're at a steady rate, so we are just doing a blanket 500 for the year. Next year, we're hoping to bring it down to $400, $300 from asking for you guys. Any questions? Eric?
Is there a reason you're not requesting funds from the Club Senate?
The way that we've done it in the past is we've done it through S&A because I understand that Senate has reimbursement, but the reimbursement from S&A has just been easier to work with for us. Also, with how much funding that you guys give out to students, it's been easier to get this money than from Senate because Senate, they use it for bigger conferences, like bigger groups than our group, so yeah.
Great.
How many students are involved with Swing Cats then?
So we have about 20 to 25 active members. As for officers, we have 8 officers, so that math, 28 to 20 or 31 people actively, and it's open to the community, so we have a fluctuation often. I believe that the highest this quarter that we've gotten is 50 people, and that's just from one event that we've done, so it really fluctuates. I hope that answers that.
Joey?
Is this, I have a two-part question, but
Yes.
is this a weekly Mondays and Thursdays?
Yes, this is a weekly Mondays and Thursdays ordeal, and Chris Peterson, he comes on Mondays to teach the lessons, and then we rent out his equipment on Thursdays to do that. On Mondays, he brings his own equipment, so that's where that price.
So the
Exactly.
cost breakdown, this is the second part.
Yes.
So that breakdown is for the whole quarter then?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that is for 1 quarter breakdown, how it adds up.
Rick?
Yeah, I didn't catch that then. So that, how many days then are we talking that Chris is
So-
here?
Hold on, 4, 5. So 9 to 10 weeks. So 9 to 10 Mondays a quarter he's here teaching, and then 9 to 10 Thursdays that we are renting the equipment. So we start the second week of classes, and then we go to the week before finals week. And every week we hold swing heads as often as possible, do exceptions of holidays and closed campus events.
Any further questions?
When you have Yule Ball, I know the club dues are from the members. Is Yule Ball, is that a fundraiser that you all do?
So yes, that's our annual fundraiser that we do, that we host every winter. It's our winter dance. It's the Harry Potter Yule Ball that we host, and it's open to everybody in the community. We get upwards of 100 to 200 people coming to it, and that's from little kids to full-grown adults, and it's all donation-based. So on average, we get about 200. The first 150 we do give to whoever is performing for us at the time, and then anything after that, it comes to the club.
Eric?
I have a question for Lacey. Is requests from the Club Senate predetermined to be only certain things?
Is there a limitation
Like
in Club Senate?
it can only be
There-
for hotel and airfare and things, and not other things.
There are limitations to Club Senate, yes.
Thank you.
Any further questions? All right, seeing none, thank you. We'll go to this week.
Thank you. See you guys next week.
All right, so next up is funding request 1902, Family and Consumer Sciences Annual Conference.
There's a clicker on the.
There is?
Mine.
I tested.
Okay.
Click over.
Yeah, it's the 900.
Okay, so my name is Kendra, and I'm a current graduate student in the Family and Child Life Department, and I'm actually a senior majoring in Family and Child Life. All right, and we'd like to start off with fundraising. So although we haven't done any fundraising, we have been involved in these activities. Our club is, the grad club is actually pretty new and is barely establishing involved in a lot of activities. We were at the nonprofit day at the farmers market, where volunteers helped with translating services, and did a little bit of outreach. At Community Connect Day, we donated helpful clothes and enjoyed helping families choose which clothes they wanted to take home. At the Strengthening Families workshop, we had Nerva Pardo, a member from the West Valley School District, come and present on family resilience and the 5 protective factors. We do have an upcoming workshop, and 2 members of the ACES cohort here from Ellensburg will be presenting on the resilience from ACES, and that's about the adverse childhood experiences.
So the actual conference we are requesting money for is the National Council on Family Relations. This organization is the oldest nonprofit organization that is solely focused on family research, practice, and education. Some of the members are involved in social services, therapy, research, education, teaching, and more. And NCFR actually established and authorizes a credential called the Certified Family Life Educator, in which our university is actually accredited for. So our graduates actually graduate and are fully, they already meet the requirements for provisional certification. This year's conference is taking place in San Diego, California, actually next week from the 6th until the 10th. This year's topic is on families and cultural intersections in a global context. This is relevant to a lot of our coursework in policy, in research, and in diversity. Many or almost all of the students that are attending the conference are taking research methods courses right now, so this is really relevant to what we are learning. Also, what's really interesting is our Families and Policy textbook is written by Andrew Sherman, who is actually one of the plenary speakers at the conference this year. So how will this benefit the students that are attending? First off, there's lots of room for professional development at this conference. So there are mentoring sessions in which students can network and communicate with other professionals in the field from all around the country, learn about job opportunities, learn about skills and how to get jobs and find jobs in our department and in our area. They also have a session on how to become a CFLE, so that credential that I mentioned earlier. And again, our students do graduate already certified to become a provisionally certified through the CFLE. So there's an interesting session where you can learn how to gain that certification. Additionally, there are opportunities for research, and although our students would love to present our research at this conference, the requests and your submissions for presenting are actually due last spring, meaning that our students would have to do their research project in their junior year, which is very rare. So most of our students are in research methods right now and therefore will not be presenting, but we do present in the spring. And since we are in research methods, we are still gaining knowledge through watching others present their research about how research works and some of the current research in our area, as well as research presenting skills. In addition, there's also breakout sessions at this conference that really lets the students who are attending choose what they want to learn about. So the things that are relevant to their interests and to their future practice working with families and children. One of the best parts of this conference is actually the university receptions. This is a session where over 30 universities from all around the country are there tabling and giving information about their graduate programs, so their master's and PhD level programs. This is really interesting for our students to get to know what kind of programs are out there when they're done with their undergraduate degree and in family and child life. We actually have some graduates from our program located all around the country in master's and PhD level programs. And it's really good to represent Central and have our students all around the country. Our major is actually growing quite a bit in the last couple of years, and so having this information about what they can do after they graduate is really helpful. So how will this benefit the students that aren't actually attending the conference? So the first thing is that all the students that attend are asked to create a handout about the things that they learned, what was interesting at the conference, and just about their overall experience. We do hang these handouts in Michelson Hall, where our program is located in the hallway. We also discuss this information in our quarterly newsletters, in our classes, at our club meetings, and post information on our Facebook page. And there's usually time in our practicum classes as well as our research methods classes for the students that attended to talk more about what they've learned. Additionally, we do have 3 graduate teaching assistants attending this conference, and so it's a really good opportunity for them to bring some knowledge that they can apply to their classrooms in their teaching in the coming quarters. Also, we are planning this year to bring information from those university receptions, so those other schools that we are learning about their master's and graduate programs, and compile all the information we're getting from them and have it all in one space so that our seniors and our students looking into graduate schools have information and access to schools.
Okay, when it comes to the selection process, we go down the line. So it continues from graduate students to Family and Child Life Club officers and down to seniors. Most of the students are also Family and Child Life majors, and all of the members that are going must have been submitted an application by October 1st and attended mandatory meetings where we've discussed all of the which plenaries to attend, who's going to be there, most interesting topics. And this is a breakdown of the anticipated cost. So as you can see, the hotel total is $2,328. We'll be having 5 rooms, 4 rooms for 4 nights at a total of $125 per night, and 1 room for 3 nights. This is because the grad students will actually be leaving a day later. We'll be leaving on Tuesday, they'll be leaving on Wednesday, just because they have class on Tuesday and they can't leave that day. For registration, we have 17 students that will be going, and it was $225 per person, and we actually registered as members because the total cost of registering as members for NCFR was a little bit cheaper than registering just as for non-members. So it came out to a total of $3,825, sorry. Okay, and parking, we will be taking 3 cars on Tuesday, and for 4 nights it would be $1,193 for a total of $143.22. The grad students leaving on Wednesday will be taking 1 car, and that will equal $35.79. For transportation services, these are for the shuttle that we'll be using from the airport to get to the hotel, to and from. It would equal $342, so averaging $20.12 per person. For airfare, the 5 students, the grad students will be traveling on Wednesday. Their price was $200 for the airfare. That would equal $1,000. The undergrads, for 12 students going at $161.27 equals $1,935. And then we are also requesting for personal funds. We won't be taking the motor pool to get to the SeaTac, but we are requesting gas for 4 personal vehicles to get from Ellensburg to Seattle, which is a total of $122.54. So the total cost of all of that is $9,733.02. If we were not to receive any funding, each student would end up paying $572.53. However, keep in mind we have already requested from Club Senate and SAS, and those have been already approved. So when it comes to hotel, airfare, we have looked at the most cheapest prices. Hotel, it's near the conference, and however, it is the most cheapest one. For transportation, we didn't go with motor pool just because it'd be cheaper to drive over there. For airfare, we kept looking at airlines, and Southwest was the cheapest, and also they allow us to bring in 2 free checked bags, unlike Delta and the other airlines. And here's the breakdown of costs.
So the total number that we are requesting from you guys is the $4,610.08, which breaks down to around $271 per student that is attending the conference. That is it. First, we wanted to ask, since this conference is in just 1 week, we were wondering if we could ask you guys to vote on this today so that we have secured funding or not before we leave for the conference. Other than that, does anyone have any questions?
And I think first, just for point of order, we'd want to ask the questions and then we can have a discussion. Yep.
So this question is for Lacey, because I could totally be off base. But is the Club Senate, isn't their request threshold $2,000?
We might have to do a central
We
wonder.
requested 2 separate clubs.
We are 2 separate clubs.
So
So
we have a grant
okay,
for
okay.
undergraduate students and another one for grad students. So that
Sorry
was
for-
the
No.
separate request.
That was my question and it was answered. Thank you.
yeah,
Thank
they
you.
requested 1,000. We requested the max 1,500. So that's why. I'm so sorry.
No.
I know it wasn't up there, but are meals included in the registration, or is that something you all are paying outside?
They're not, so the meals will be completely out of the students' pockets.
Yeah.
And there are limited meal, like little snacks provided here and there, but overall meals.
That's what I figured. I thought it would be
Yeah,
snacks.
that would be really great if they were.
Yes, we are not requesting funds.
Greg?
So who's requesting funds is the Family and Consumer Sciences Department. And then it says, do you have a club account? Yes, so I'm wondering if is there a club, a student club also, or? I just want clarification there, I guess.
We are within the Family and Consumer Sciences Department, but we are the Family and Child Life Club
Okay.
within that. Yes,
Yes, two separate clubs. The Family and Child Life Undergraduate Club and the Family and Child Life Graduate Club have both requested funding from Club Senate and First Services.
Club account is just for family science.
Yeah. So our club, yeah, it was just the Family Science and the grad club.
So that's one club account balance. And I think at the very beginning of the presentation, you talked about fundraising or a lack of, or that there, I'm confused. I mean, I don't know where I saw it. If I read it,
Currently in the
down here.
process
It's like
of
fundraising t-shirts.
ordering and selling t-shirts. That's how we will be fundraising. But most of our efforts have been concentrating on getting out in the community and establishing our club and growing, providing personal development, the activities that we have done. The grad club is newly established, and then the members are incoming, so it's really in. The conference is also pretty soon, pretty early on in the quarter, so it doesn't give us much time to do as much fundraising. However, we are establishing new ways of fundraising for next year's conference.
Have you, since the conference is next week already, have you guys already purchased all the things that you had listed up, the expenses?
Yes, everything has already been purchased, and if I remember right, so some of the airfare for the graduate students was already purchased through, was that through Club Senate or through?
So for the
Okay,
undergrad
it's
club,
already purchased.
Through Club Senate?
Yeah, through Club Senate has already purchased the airfare, and then our registration was already booked. The rest of the funds, so for the hotel, as well as for gas and airfare for the undergraduates, was out of pocket. Okay.
Any further questions? So, do we want to vote on this tonight?
I mean, we'll still go through the other,
Okay, the others,
requests,
okay.
and then we'll circle back.
Just as a point on that, the funding will not be released until the PBAC committee does vote on it, which is not until the 13th of November. So just as a piece of information, so just if they vote yes here, does not mean that it's actually approved.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Perfect, thank you.
Next on the agenda is funding request 1903 for the College Media Convention and the Observer.
Magazine does have the same course with the newest issue. Yeah. So I'm Bailey Wicks, and I'm the editor-in-chief of Pulse Magazine.
My name is Zon Schultz. I'm the director of photography of Pulse.
My name is Matt Conradi. I'm the creative director for Pulse.
I'm Anna Karen Garcia. I'm assistant editor for Pulse Magazine.
My name's Hanson Lee. I'm the sports editor for the Observer.
I'm Jeff Belcher. I'm the news editor for the Observer.
And I'm Matt Eskimi. I'm the scene editor for the Observer.
So both the Observer and Pulse went to a conference this last weekend. We were unable to present in the previous session because we had left already for the conference. And we went to the Associated Collegiate Press and College Media Association National Conference and Convention. We have the clicker? No. So the impact of Pulse. So Pulse is now printing 1,000 copies twice a quarter and distributing that Yakima, Wenatchee, as well as on campus. These are actually some of our last copies. We had a tabling event earlier and they've all been picked up. So the 1,000 copies have been distributed well. We also revamped our website and have new multimedia like Pulse Radio, Pulse Lens. We also have podcasts and new video content as well. The online version has been apart for 10 years, and the printed version has been here for 5, so that's the 50th issue. And then we produce about 2,993 impressions per issue online and distribute 900 of the 1,000 usually. This time we've distributed all, so.
So the Observer, it is a weekly that is distributed and printed by the end of the evening, usually on Wednesdays. And we are both a weekly online as well as print. And so as it pertains to editors, we have a total of 6 staff. That includes the EIC, the managing editor, the scene editor, the sports editor, the news editor, the copy desk editor. And then we have senior reporters. And we have class twice a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays. And roughly each section is like around 4 reporters. And so it just provides a valuable experience for them to get time to learn how to write for a paper publication at this level.
So the details of the conference, there were 7 of us going. All 7 of us that are up here went to the conference. It was in Louisville, Kentucky, and it consisted of October 24th through the 28th. So some of the benefits that the students will receive.
Yeah, so these conferences, and specifically the one we just went to, has been really big for Pulse. Actually, in this most recent issue, on page 30, we talk about some of the big highlights on how we've improved as a magazine, and a big majority of those are due to these conferences. So basically, we get to go to various sessions and that relate to our field. So there's editing, leadership, writing, design sessions, and within those, we're getting to listen to speakers that are working professionally within the field. And so basically, we get to go to these sessions, and I know for me personally, I will go to sessions, and then afterwards, I speak one-on-one with every speaker and have them email me their presentations that they gave, and then I'm going to be giving those presentations to the rest of our staff this week. So it's basically just giving us tools to better our magazine. And so besides from that, the ultimate goal of making our magazine just better overall is to be able to connect with students and engage in a way that makes them think about topics that they necessarily wouldn't think about, or provide new various viewpoints on topics. And so that's been our biggest goal recently, is just to expand our outreach, and these conferences have gave us our tools to be able to do that.
On the newspaper side, kind of similar to Pulse in terms of the benefits, but it just provides a great educational experience, getting to go to these conferences and listen to other people who've been in the industry for years, get those different voices and tips for advice. Like there's design workshops and like workshops like for us specifically as editors, you know, we have a reporting staff. A lot of reporters don't have that experience, so learn how to coach writers the correct way, and then just all of that in between, just coming out with a great learning experience. And then like keynote speakers and everything else that goes into it. It's a great way to become a better journalist, no matter how good you are, and it's a great way to network with people who could get you jobs in the future.
I think it's important to note that now we've been to a few conferences as a publication, not the exact same people, but just Pulse being present at conferences, that when we go now, I was sitting in a session that had Pepperdine University, Harvard University, Yale, all these things, and one of the schools said they were going to start a magazine, and they told them to check out Pulse. So it was really, really cool and satisfying that, you know, a publication from Ellensburg, Washington is receiving this much recognition at such a national level.
That's true, and like we also, because Pulse is present at these conferences, it also transfers to the new members of Pulse that then, you know, take over and then continue going. For example, I was really fortunate to connect with Bradley Wilson, someone our previous director of photography, Ryan Weird, was able to get in contact and establish a relationship with. So I was able to go and have a one-on-one sit down with him and talk about the visuals in our magazine and see what we're doing good, what we can improve on, and how we can get a better connection between us and the students to get better engagement.
So some of the impact and recognition. So at the national conference, there was 3 separate awards. The Pinnacle Awards, which is a year-long we submitted in the spring, and then they chose the finalists out of the nation. Same with the Pacemaker, and then the Best in Show Awards. You have to be present to be inserted. It's out of all the publications there. So at the conference, Pulse placed 7th for Best in Show Feature Magazine, beating out some of the bigger schools, like I said, like Pepperdine and that kind of stuff. And then some of the other awards that we have won in the last 8 months, 5th place for Best Feature Photo and 3rd place for Best Feature Photo, the 2017 Diversity Awards. We are the first group to take over the Student Diversity Award, as well as 2017 Best Website, and many others that have happened at other conferences as well.
So kind of on the observer side, we didn't get any awards at this past conference, but we've still gotten awards, a lot of awards in the past. And so in Long Beach in the spring, we got 5th for Best of Show for 4-year weekly. We got 3rd for our website, being a small school, in the small school category. And then in the past, we have won 1st place for Best in Show multiple times for 4-year weekly. And just, I think this type of national and regional recognition is so pivotal because it just carries over for the future success of the publication. When you have this sort of recognition, you're not the only ones who see it, your community sees it, the people who read your paper see it, ads who want to be in your paper, for companies for those ads, they see it too, and I think it gives us the platform to have a greater impact on the people that read our paper when we go and we submit ourselves in these conferences and get to have that experience.
So we supported the $750 of our own budget to this conference. So you see that the original total says $7,000 something, but we're only asking the $6,000 amount from you guys. And this is how kind of the funding broke down. So for the conference hotel, we got the early bird sign-up special, and so it was the cheapest to stay at the hotel that had the conference in it. And we had 2 rooms for the 7 students. The registration fee, which was also the early bird sign-up, we got into that early. And the award entry, so we put in 1 for Pulse and 1 for the Observer, and that's the Best of Show entries that happen there that you have to be present for, as well as the breakout sessions. So Thursday is a pre-conference setting, so we all were in a 3-hour session with professionals, and that was the $50 per student, as well as an on-site critique from professionals, and we each had 1 critique as well. And the total is $6,562. Are there any questions? Any questions? Great. Yes.
So you won that 7th place award at this conference?
Yeah. Yes, as well as 5th place in the nation for Best Feature Photo as the Pacemaker Award, which is the highest form of collegiate award you can get as a journalist, as well as 3rd place for the Pinnacle Award for Feature Photo in the nation.
Joey?
Yes.
I just have a question. Looking at, you have it estimated at $20 a day for meals. Where did you get the $20 a day?
We lowballed it.
Okay.
Going to maybe a Chipotle for lunch and dinner, and packing our own granola bars for breakfast.
Yeah.
So we scrounged a bit, but we felt like we had to eat it, and the conference never provided.
I mean, that was my other part. How much was the conference?
Yeah.
I mean, I know you all weren't requesting funds for that. I was just looking at it. Seemed probably low.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So this is all said and done, so it's already been paid for. Was that through Pulse and Observer in their accounts, and this would reimburse it, or is that for Lacey?
Yes, so the Observer and Pulse, they were in communication with us pretty early on. Actually, probably even in the summer, they brought this up to our attention, knowing that this conference every year conflicts pretty much with their meetings. It's pretty much the same time. So I had them kind of submit their justification, and so they went ahead and did the early bird registration and everything, so they ran it through their department in the hopes that it would be reimbursed.
But just as a reminder, all S&A funding is reimbursement. So anyone coming, or even when it's ahead of time, we
Okay.
still only give them the funds as a reimbursement after it's already been spent.
And just as, so the date on the supplemental is the 10th of October, but that's actually just because I told her to officially submit it then. We've been talking since probably August about this request.
As the chair of the Department of Art and Design, I have students that are part of these organizations, and this is communications. Is that a conflict of interest?
Unless you feel that it is, I would think no, unless you're directly advising or overseeing them, or there's a personal benefit piece out of there that your department would have. Yeah. It's a great question. I appreciate you asking that.
Any further questions? Seeing none? Vote on this.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is supplemental funding request 1904 for the Rising Stars Conference.
Hello everyone, my name is Akram Dowd and I'm the senator for IEEE. I'm a junior and I'm an EET major, if you're curious. Now, our club would like to request $2,260 to attend the Rising Stars Conference, which will be held in Las Vegas, Nevada from January 4th to January 6th. And we plan to bring 10 people to this trip. How we chose these 10 people? Well, nicely and not nicely. It's just, our club's pretty small, so we're able to have people raise hands. And we can fit it. Now, regarding what's happening in the IEEE Rising Stars Conference, there's going to be opportunities for our participants to participate in a a cybersecurity competition, attend Arduino hardware workshops, which is really helpful for most of the ET majors because what we do in our club sometimes relies too much on Arduino. It's an easy way for circuiting. That's how I think the drive work and office. They'll also provide opportunities to work on resumes focused on the electrical engineering aspect and how to outreach with electrical engineering companies. It also provides really nice networking opportunities with companies within the electrical engineering industry, which is sometimes kind of hard to find in like a normal career fair because usually when I attend there's about like maybe 3 that relates to me fairly well, so this is a great opportunity. And in fact, last year, one of our alumni, Jerry Kingsler, he got a job opportunity from this event. And he's really benefiting from it right now. And there's a lot more. That's just day 1. Day 2, there's too many conferences for me to mention. There's going to be, we can attend 7 conferences, and there's going to be 4 different rooms, each holding 7 different conferences. So there's a lot to learn from these. And from the funding that we've gotten so far, we've gotten $2,000 from Club Senate, $1,500 from SAS, $500 from Career Services, and we're using $200 from our club account. In our club account, we got the $200 from basically from last year, where we had seminars where we charged a small admission fee to teach people how to solder or learn how to do a specific circuit and have them take it with them so they have something they can work on later on. And then we also had one bake sale. So far, the purchases that we've made with the money that we've had was we purchased the plane tickets, which had to be out of pocket. Then we made reservations to the hotel, which is also the venue, called the Tropicana. And for the 3 rooms that we're requesting, there's going to be 3 people per room, except for 1 room, which will have 4 people. And that will be $600, not including tax, total, not just per room. And then we also have, we're in the process of paying the registration fee, which is $295 per person with the early bird. And we're bringing 10 people, so that's $2,950. And the reimbursement that we are requesting, so we're requesting this specific amount of money just for the reimbursement of the airline tickets and for, what's that name called? Motorpool. So the goals that our club have for this event is that we want to learn more about the electrical engineering industry and the more cutting edge technology that you don't really get to see in universities too often, mostly because we're too busy. And we also want to enhance your skills with hands-on workshops. We also plan on hosting more seminars in the future, and we plan on trying to use what we learn from these conferences to try to broaden, well, the ETSC department. And does anyone have any questions? Yes.
Sorry for my ignorance. IEEE, I'd never heard of this before, but I guess it's electronic engineering is two of the E's.
Those are the two that I got so far too.
That's a very popular question. Okay, so IEEE used to stand for the Institute of Electrical and Electronics Engineers, but now we sort of just cut that off and just remained IEEE because now we include more than electronic engineers. And as a matter of fact, IEEE is one of the biggest international organizations in regards to electrical engineers and in engineering in general. So it's very prestigious and it allows a lot of opportunities for us. Yes?
Just to clarify, I know you said that the request was to cover the airfare and the motor pool, but is the amount, it has listed on here $2,260. Is that the amount that's requesting? Because I know that's just under the amount of air. It looks like the rest of it's covered.
Sorry, let me check the reference.
Yep,
So,
you're
let's see. So, the thing is, the hotel fee, the hotel costs that we initially calculated turned out to be a little cheaper. So we were able to make some slight adjustments. So there's going to be a slight variability between the costs that we have here and the costs that we actually use, but it will be under. And also, we will be bringing, proof of purchases. And we are going to be basing our reimbursements off the proof of purchases and not this. But I can guarantee it will be cheaper than this.
And I think my other question, I know this marked on here when you had submitted requested, but it sounds like, did you get it committed from SAS and Club Senate that they were to give you
Yes.
funds? Okay.
They're all committed.
Great.
Any further questions? Seeing none, we'll vote on the policy. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Moving on to supplemental funding request 1905, the Big Band Tour of China and Taiwan.
Hi, we are here because we have an incredible opportunity in front of us to be a part of a big band tour in China and Taiwan. My name is Jake Krieger. I play the saxophone. I'm a music education as well as music performance major here at Central. I'm in my 4th year and I play saxophone. I already said that.
My name is Ryan McNutt. I also play saxophone. This is my 4th year here at Central, and I'm currently a music performance major.
I'm Spencer Manning. I play the trumpet. It's my senior year here at Central Washington University, and I'm a performance major as well as a music education major.
My name is Tom Harbaugh. This is my 6th year at Central here. I've spent 3 as a Bachelor of Arts in Music, and I'm currently pursuing a major in film, specialization in production.
So what is this? This is a 14-day tour of various cities in China and Taiwan. We'll be touring and performing with the IHS World Orchestra, which is a international big band. We'll be playing with musicians from all over the world. The tour director is from Switzerland. There are members in the band from Denmark, Turkey, Israel, and lots of other places. We'll be performing in a lot of different venues, in jazz clubs, town halls, universities, parks. Last year, you'll see a picture in a second, but they performed at the U.S. Embassy in Taiwan.
Some of the locations that we'll be visiting, first we'll make our stop in Guangzhou, China, followed by Nanjing, China, Shanghai, Beijing, and then we'll be making our last stop in Taipei and for the itinerary, it's in December, we're going to be arriving in Guangzhou December 9th. We'll be spending 4 days, so most of our time in Guangzhou, 2 in Nanjing, 3 in Shanghai, 2 days in Beijing, and to wrap it up, we'll be spending our last 3 days in Taipei, and we will be departing on the 22nd.
And if I may provide some sort of insight as to what this trip would mean for all of us up here. As musicians as well as music educators, this kind of opportunity doesn't come around a lot. And it allows us to see exactly what we could possibly be doing in the field that we would like to go into. As you know, the music business is kind of a close-knit, tight business and sometimes hard to get into. And so a lot of people in this group have connections into the field that we would like to go into. Not to mention that it also gives us performing opportunities and experience in what we would like to do. Another aspect as to why this trip is so cool is because it allows us to not only share a true American art form with outside people, outside of the community, outside of the United States, it also allows us to share our culture with another demographic of people and to also enjoy theirs.
On top of that, this is just an incredible professional development opportunity for us. The music department here at Central is phenomenal, but there's also a large difference between spending an entire quarter preparing for one performance at the end of the quarter versus spending a couple rehearsals and then getting on the road and performing with professional musicians. It's like a hyper-concentrated internship for us, and this is just not an opportunity that comes around very often in the modern day music education system. Additionally, we'll get to represent Central Washington University on the international stage. As you may or may not know, the music department has a fairly solid reputation around the nation here, but this is a chance for us to share that across the globe.
And to piggyback that, to get this kind of experience is as close to a professional performing environment as you can possibly get.
Yeah, and to branch off of what Jacob and Spencer talked about, it's just basically you have the opportunity to really be a musician first-handedly. We're performing in a new environment with new people. We're actively traveling, and it's kind of a thing where there's one rehearsal and we're having a lot of performances over the 14-day period. So it's really.
Lastly, as future educators, this is an incredible opportunity for us to gain just worldly experience that we can share with our future music students. In addition to the students here at Central who will not be.
And to directly apply the skills that the university has given us into the professional world as well.
So our budget, this is going to be a rather expensive endeavor as it is an international travel. The international flights is somewhat flexible. Based on our best estimates, it's going to cost around $1,100 a person for to get to Guangzhou and then to come back from Taipei. The domestic flights and hotels, this covers flights across China, as those cities that we previously mentioned are very spread out, as if LA to New York, not quite that far, but you get the picture. And so the domestic flights and hotels are organized by the tour manager who has already booked those flights and hotels for us, and that is a relatively fixed cost. The visas, all 4 of us have to have Chinese visas to spend the amount of time that we're spending in China. And those are rather expensive. Those are temporary visa, though they're good for 10 years and up to 60 days of actual travel. But they are a temporary cost. And the interurban travel is for us. We will be flying to and from various cities, but while we're in the cities, in order to get where we need to be to perform, we'll have to be, taking buses, trains, taxis, and the like. And so that's what that breaks down to. Some costs you don't see on there is the food. We'll have to eat out for 14 days while we're there, and that gets kind of expensive. And while our dollar might go a little bit further over there, it's not enough to make it entirely affordable for us. So it's relatively similar to eating out for 14 days here. Additionally, we all have to purchase passports, and that is, my understanding, that's not something that can be covered by the school, but that's an expensive cost. And lastly, we, as musicians, we have various instrument repair things are we play instruments that are really expensive and require regular upkeep and materials to be played, like reeds and things like that. And so those are just some costs that you don't see necessarily included in the budget. But yeah, okay. Any questions for us?
Have you reached out to your academic senator in the music department to request funds from the Student Academic Senate?
No, actually, that is not something that we have done yet. We have talked with the chair of the music department, Dr. Quilly, about possibly securing funds from the music department, as well as we're looking into the Office of Undergraduate Research. But no questions.
Okay.
This one's for Lacey, actually. Are visas coverable by S&A funds?
So we need to have proof in order, so there's just some documentation that they'd have to submit, but if it's temporary for their trip, it would be allowable, but if it's for an extended period of time outside of that, no.
Greg?
So I guess this organization that you're touring with, then, is the name the Jazz Big Band Tour? That's the official name. Is it a group? I mean, it's an organization that does this quite often. Did you applied for this? I'm trying to just understand how this came about and how large is that group? Are you 4 and a mix of 200 other musicians, or in the middle of 8?
Has actually done. I can answer the question. I've been a part of this same organization for the past 3 years. I've been the vocalist representing it, the sole vocalist. We're a nonprofit organization, and the group tends to fluctuate, but it is about 20 to 25 people. So we have a regularly consistent group of about 5 to 6 members per each section, aside from piano, drums, bass, guitar, things like that.
It's about a 20-person jazz band.
Yeah. Okay.
And the organization is the IHS World Orchestra. Just for the purposes of the title for this, we just said the Big Band Tour, because there's no on-campus affiliation.
IHS World Orchestra.
Yes.
Okay.
The way that this came about is Professor John Harbaugh actually approached all of us. He's the trumpet professor here at Central Washington University. He approached all of us about joining him on the tour. So that's kind of the story about how this all came about.
And he's part of this group too.
You're right. Yes, he'll be performing as well with us. So he'll be in charge with us.
Okay.
Is the organization that you are going with covering any of the costs at all for you to be in these countries? Like, they're not covering domestic flights or anything like that at all?
No, as it is a nonprofit, the cost falls upon us.
Does any of this money go to that organization?
No, the money is purely just for the cost of us having the experience and performing. The cost of the tour.
Eric?
This is all your first time going to this?
For the 3 of us, it's 4. Yes. Yeah. Tom has been the vocalist with the band for a while.
You quickly spoke about how this would impact students here at Central. How do you see that for taking place? Yeah.
Tom would be a really great.
So because of your major. In the past, I've spoken about this before. The experiences that I've brought back from these previous trips have greatly affected me as a musician, especially when I was in that major. It gave me a different perspective about how music is perceived overseas and how we can bring that same experience back to the States. Again, this whole trip is about sharing experiences and sharing different cultures and kind of swapping those traditions, swapping those parts of ourselves that other countries may not be familiar with. As far as affecting the students here, I think it's contained really with the 4 of us being students, but we take these experiences that we give and we use them, especially for the education majors. They're teachable moments for future students. They are opportunities for younger students to get involved in international travel, and as they briefly mentioned, it's an opportunity for them to step out of the academic world and to enter the professional world in a semi-controlled academic environment.
Not to mention that also your major allows you to document a lot of what we're going to be doing over there. And with that documentation, we can present to a variety of different clubs, including the National Association for Music Educators, as well as the GEN Club, the Jazz Education Network. And so that allows us to reach out to our fellow music educators and as well as our fellow performers.
To piggyback off what you just said, have you thought about presenting that film at Source?
That'd be a lovely idea, but that sounds awesome.
I may have to reach out to some of the people in the film department to get appropriate equipment. In the past, I've used a simple video camera recorder. Normally, I've been able to catch about 18 plus hours of footage plus 30 plus hours of editing, placing it into something. It's been more of a personal project of mine, but if I can reach out and get better equipment, possibly get a crew. Well, I don't want to add them into the mix, but I can be a one-man crew if I have to be. But I'd be more than willing to create something with quality and present it to you, present it to Source, make it something worthwhile.
Great.
Just a question for those in charge down there. This thing, my first time and first day on this committee, but it was brought up about other funding sources, and if you sought anything at this point. And so it sounds like there is some opportunities for that. I mean, is that something we address as a committee, or is that part of our discussion, or I don't know how that maybe plays into all of this, or is that something we can find out more before we vote on this next week?
To speak on some of the other funding sources, I think right now they're not coming from a club's perspective. They're coming kind of single students here. So there's Club Senate is out. As for Academic Senate, Academic Senate has the least amount of funding. In all of them, they have about $30,000, and so it's usually they're advised, if it's a large figure like this, to not necessarily go to Academic Senate because it could be only a few $100s. So that doesn't mean that they can't. It just means that they're usually kind of advised to go a different avenue. As for any other funding, undergrad research, it sounds like you guys have reached out to those individuals, and that is an opportunity. The only other funding source that I'm aware of is career services.
To give you clarification as to why we're in front of you today is because we are from a variety of different, they play saxophone, I play trumpet, he's a film major. So we've got people from different departments and different instrumental clubs as well. And with the number that we have to ask for, this was the most applicable place to be.
Well, and I think the other part is, yes, that is an applicable thing for the committee to ask of the other funding sources. There is not a requirement that they need to have funding from other places, but often in the past the committee has wanted to look and see to make sure that there's other things that have been explored, or if there's money themselves that they're putting into it, those types of things. So absolutely questions for us to ask in general for these types. Yeah.
A couple of pieces too. There is a few hoops that they need to jump through when it comes to international travel that they didn't touch on. That's insurance pieces that they're required to pay out of pocket and some other things. And then also, I've got a question, not necessarily for this request, but how many are you guys involved in any clubs on campus?
Yes. I'm one of the officers for the Gen Club that I think is presenting later tonight.
Oh, good. I was looking for the Gen Club, so great, you're here.
Yes. I think they're actually downstairs.
Cool.
Get in touch.
I'm the vice president for the National Association for Music Educators Club, and I also have close ties with the Trumpet Club.
Okay.
I'm a staff in the club. I am not involved in any clubs yet.
And the reason why I ask that is because we try to make sure that individually the clubs don't go to Club Senate and ask for the same request. And so sometimes when you do have a blend of people that are in multiple clubs, it's easier and more efficient for them to come to us.
Great question.
Yeah. And so just one other than, I mean, this trip is December 8th. And it sounded like you don't have passports yet?
We have purchased passports. That's just a thing that we have.
And I'm going to assume you've already applied for your visa?
We have with the application.
Okay.
Yeah, because of the processing time.
Yes.
Right, yeah.
We actually just sent out our stuff to Seattle so that they can send it to San Francisco.
Send it back.
Yeah.
And just a point for the committee to know, especially about international travel, regardless of the vote for this committee, they still have to go through the approval process with international studies. So this committee could say yes, but if international studies doesn't support this trip, we will not be able to fund it. So they can't just go out on their own. They actually have to go through the CW channels to travel.
And just to speak on that a little bit, I have been in talks with Steve, who I believe is the person who's in charge of everything, and everything is on track to be submitted. We just have a couple informational packets to send to him, and then, but he's been in talks with Professor Harbaugh as well as myself about making this trip a go. So,
Steve Cook.
Yeah.
Any further questions? Seeing none, thanks so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all. Thank you for your time and consideration. It's greatly appreciated.
So we want to make sure Jen gets here pretty soon?
Yes. I will
They're there.
get the copy.
They're now.
I would, knowing it's not on the agenda, but as we're reaching out to them and since there are not other pieces on the agenda, I would make a recommendation that we can use this time to have the discussion, if the committee so chooses, to talk about the request from 1902 to potentially vote on that tonight, if you all are fine.
Okay.
Unless they're walking in the door. Just kidding. We're going to move to them since they just walked in. Great timing. Nope, you are good. So I'll let you move this along. Oh, it just in general that one.
All right, so now we're moving on to supplemental funding request 1906, the Gen Conference.
Someone have a mouse?
Over here.
I do.
Well, this is always the fun part. Oh wow, it's there from last year.
Hi, so we're here representing the Gen Club, and we're going to talk about a Gen Conference and like funding for that. I'm Eureka Koff, I'm a sophomore, and I play piano.
I'm Carl Hennings, I am a junior and I play bass.
I'm Hannah Reed, I'm a senior, and I play tuba.
I'm Jake Hauser, I play piano and I sing.
Hi, my name's Allison, I'm a sophomore and I'm vocalist.
I'm Will Miller, I'm a sophomore and I'm a trumpet player.
I'm Shayna Ellis, I'm a freshman and I play alto sax.
My name is Nick Novi, I'm a fifth year and I play flute and guitar.
I'm John Joy, I'm a junior and I play trombone.
I'm Matt Nguyen, I'm also a junior and I play trumpet.
Okay, so what exactly is GEN? GEN stands for Jazz Educative Network, and what our goal is to teach jazz and educate students in schools and keeping the jazz style alive because it is an American style. And our particular organization is a global nonprofit, which our specific chapter in Ellensburg, Washington, is the model for the entire nation. So on the actual GEN website, when you go online, you'll see a bit about our chapter, videos, and people interviewed about our chapter and what we do and how we are so successful at getting funding for events that we throw, and then also getting, events going like this, trying to go to the GEN conference.
So the Gen Conference this year is January 19th through the 12th, and it's in Reno, Nevada. There are 3 full days of clinics, and there's going to be tons of clinics about how to play in the jazz style, how to teach it. It's going to be basically a huge congregation of all of the leading jazz educators and jazz performers. We'll be able to see clinics on how to teach it and also performances on what it sounds like.
There's quite a few benefits from this Special Moments Conference. The main ones is that we're going to learn from the world's leading experts in a couple of categories. Improvisation, which is the heart of jazz, essentially. Everything we do revolves around making spontaneous music. Pedagogy, rehearsing, composing and arranging, performing, and then the history of jazz within America. All this stuff helps our personal growth, our ability to help others, teach each other, and we also make great connections at the festival because the jazz world is nice and small. We can all meet each other and travel and play together. It's a lot of fun.
So our selection process is relatively straightforward. We hold an open meeting for the club where any member can show up and give a short speech as to why they deserve to go to this trip. Some certain criteria that we look for include instrumentation, what instruments you play. We try to send a diverse selection of instruments and voices to the conference so that all of our groups here and all of our players here are well represented. We also look at jazz experience, our experience in the jazz idiom, our experience teaching jazz and music in general, our involvement with the Gen Club here at Central, note-taking abilities and studiousness. We want people who can take good notes to report back to the rest of the club when we come home, and also our seniority, how old or how young we are. So the Board of Officers in the CWU Gen Club narrows the list down to the top 15 who they think are eligible to go, and our advisor, Professor Chris Brouillet, who is head of jazz studies here, decides on the final 11.
So this conference is very beneficial to our Gen chapter here. All of us will be splitting up to cover all of the clinics so that we can take notes and then share it with the rest of our chapter. Some of these clinics and performances will also be recorded. There's a Google Drive where all of the members of our chapter will be able to access this information. And we'll also be having a meeting after the conference to discuss our favorite parts and what we learned and share it with the rest of the music department.
We're asking money for airfare, for the Gen membership, for conference registration, for hotel, for food, for gas to get to the airport, and for parking.
So overall, this is a really beneficial event for not only the club, but for the Gen department and the music department as a whole. It's really important that we go because we are representing Central outside of Washington and outside of Ellensburg, where there's not a large jazz scene already. And since we are the model for them, it's expected that we go. And it should not, finances shouldn't be, something that holds us back. Not everyone is privileged enough to afford paying for themselves. We're all poor college students. Some of us more poor than others, and it's important that we can get this information, relay it out to everyone else, and make the music department stronger at Central. Do you have any questions?
Greg?
Mine's for Joey, so.
How many students belong to Gen?
The overall club?
On campus here, your club?
Over 100.
Over 100. And so, why 11?
Because we can't fly all 100 of us.
But why not 12 or 14 or 9 or? I mean, 11 seemed like a really specific number, so I just was wondering why.
Well, because of the hotel and the rooming situation, we're gonna have 2 rooms, and then because we have only one female member in the Jazz 1 band who's going to present and perform at Reno, we're actually able to send more people than we originally would. So we can send 3 more women, which is also very important, women to represent us at the conference.
Joey.
Yep.
So when we kind of accept funding, do we get them to come back and do report backs for us?
It is not a requirement. At least the committee has not set that as a requirement in the past. It's something that we have some groups who do voluntarily come and give us a report back, a presentation, and some groups, specifically the committee, has asked to come back and give information on, but it is not a requirement of the funding. But again, the committee can choose to.
What's the process to get that going?
You all would make that decision.
Okay.
If you wanted that as a standard, we would want to make sure we're letting groups know when we're giving them the funding that part of the expectation is to come and give a 5-minute report back or whatever that is.
Okay.
We can't. I mean, it'd be nice to request a little performance now to help us.
Well, I just wanted kind of reports to see what they learned and what they're going to teach and kind of how they're going to enhance all the other students on Central. Yeah. And then especially the ones who are going to China, and a big theme for me and kind of the campus is diversity and cultural competency. So for them to come back and tell us how they bettered themselves, it'd be pretty cool.
If I could touch on that, we actually have a website that Nomi here set up, and all of the students that have paid their Gen dues within the club can all access this website. It has all of the notes we've taken, all the videos that our secretary has taken at every event. and so there's access like always online to get for all these kids.
Okay, thank you.
Just a piece on that report back that Renee was talking about as a general note is that the President's Budget Advisory Committee has made a comment about how there's members on that committee that have wanted to see, you know, whether that's videos or pictures or something like that of what the funding is going towards. So not necessarily saying that it should
And then
be
feedback gets the things
required,
that we
but I am
get.
saying that I have heard others speak similar.
I know it has on here listed that you had put in a request to SAS. Have you all heard back from them yet? Okay.
We'll be doing that on Tuesday.
Okay. And has there been a request to Club Senate, or was that the only request for the club right now?
We will not be asking for money from Club Senate because we see Club Senate as, you know, as for smaller things. This isn't the only thing our club does throughout the year. We also periodically, like once a quarter, we'll send a group of students to go see a performance in Seattle because jazz artists don't really come to Ellensburg unless we pay them to, which is more expensively going to Seattle to see them. As well as like we'll put on local clinics with maybe some of the professors or local people that we're not paying this huge sum that we would go to SAS or S&A. So we try to, our Club Senate money is for those smaller events.
And it may be similar, but again, knowing we'll be discussing next week. Knowing that your club account, I mean, it has listed that you have about $2,400 in the club account. Is that similarly intended for those other events throughout the year? Because I know it doesn't look like any of that's dedicated for this.
Yeah, and that money is also, last year we bought a keyboard for the club, which we use at all our jam sessions, as well as for students who can't afford to own a keyboard and need it for a gig, they can borrow ours. And we can't ask you guys to buy us equipment. So that money, like this year we're gonna buy a bass amp, next year we wanna buy a drum set. So that money is also for other things.
Great.
I mean, I'm not getting out my calculator here, but the food, is that part of this total?
Yes. Yes.
Any further questions? Eric?
This question is for Lacey. Food would, if the committee approved food, it would be based on the per diem rate.
That would be the max that they could be reimbursed.
Yeah, okay, I was just curious.
Any further questions? Seeing none, we'll be voting on this next week. Thanks so much, you guys. Thank you.
And I implemented the updates communication received and use that communication received. The request.
So now let's go ahead and talk about other business, any communications received, and bring up the conversation about voting tonight on supplemental funding request 1902.
Personally, because S&A committee is a reimbursement body, I would like us to maintain regular order and discuss this in the next week. That's just my 2 cents. So we don't create a precedent where people can request that. My 2 cents.
Lacey.
Just so everybody's aware, even if you vote on this tonight, and let's just say it's a yes, it still wouldn't get to the PBAC until the 13th, which if you vote next week, it would still be the same day. So,
Rest of the same meeting.
yeah.
Any further discussion?
Was that a motion by Eric?
No, because at this point we don't need necessarily a motion. We would need a motion if we wanted to add it to the agenda to vote on tonight and to deliberate.
Yeah, I just hope you go.
Alex.
Kind of a general question, but is there kind of a precedent for how much we allocate for specific students? Like how much money we can give one student?
We haven't talked about a specific dollar figure for that.
There is not. I mean, that's one of the pieces with S&A why we see the larger requests as well. And some of the others is we don't have that specific cap or cutoff. That's something, again, you all as a committee can have some general conversation. My recommendation, and again, Lacey may have a different recommendation, so feel free to counter me. My recommendation is not to be extremely specific with that because, again, some of these requests they're going to be very different. And I know committees in the past have tried to break it down to we only want to allow this much for each student, and then it becomes each request is going to be very different when we look at that. So the committee amongst yourselves can have some of that conversation as we are doing this to have an idea, but I would caution about setting a very hard limit on what that is. But we do want to be mindful of not allocating a massive amount of money just to one student because we're looking at the overall benefit.
And similar, but I would say there are other funding groups that are underneath S&A supplemental groups that are very restrictive. Club Senate is restrictive, Academic Senate is restrictive, ESC is restrictive. So the intent of the supplemental budget is supposed to remove those restrictions and have it open for all students. That being said, it doesn't necessarily mean you can't set a cap, but just be mindful that we do advise certain groups to come here due to the flexibility that the supplemental budget has.
Good question.
Any further discussion? Greg?
And I'm just looking at our minutes, and I'm trying to just recall the last meeting to set the supplemental budget at 250.
Yep.
Right. So, oh, there we go. Oh yeah. So that's what we decided for this whole year.
Yep.
Correct. All right. So I don't know. And I guess what's not clear to me yet as we're moving forward, and there's a couple big ones here already, that there's going to be a period where there's even going to be more, or with heavier times and larger requests or something. But I'm still trying to grasp that concept of how we kind of plan ahead, or be cautious, but not be too cautious, because then we don't want to cheat out these early ones versus what happens later. And maybe I just look to maybe you guys for guidance too on some of this.
I mean, I think that is you hit it right on the nose. I mean, that's the, issue that we have is we have these amazing, requests that come through, but it's as soon as, the money's out, the money's out. So whether you guys want to start being mindful at the beginning of certain things, that's fine, but I would say just stick with that throughout the year, which can be tedious. I know that last year's committee did do that, and it can be tedious, which is why my advice to this committee this year is to think of it as a general dollar figure for the event or for the trip, not necessarily itemizing, oh, we're going to pay for motor pool or we won't pay for motor pool, because there's some groups that are going to other sources and so of funding, and so it's kind of easier if we just say, we're going to do X amount for this event or trip or request.
This is like the 6 groups that requested funding was close to like 30,000 for this week, it looks like. And so we have like 8-7 weeks left of this quarter, and then we have 2 more quarters, obviously. So is this one of the bigger weeks, I guess is what I want to ask? Or is this pretty average, or is this?
Don't know.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's actually a good point that I wanted to bring up is we are looking at 13 requests for this quarter. And this is, we can't really tell, so it can't be a definite, like, this is it, this is how many we're requesting, or we'll see this year. But we have a packed agenda for every single meeting that we have for the rest of this quarter. So it's going to be difficult. We might be able to squeeze in maybe 1 more request or maybe 2, depending on how the next weeks go. But this is probably it for fall quarter.
Yeah, because and again, I know we have several weeks left in the quarter, but we don't meet during Thanksgiving week.
Right, okay.
Because of that, and then we don't meet during finals. So we actually, after this meeting, have 3 more business meetings. The 7th, the 14th, and then the 28th for the rest of this quarter.
So are all the items listed there, are those the ones for this quarter?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And those are to date, what we have in the queue. And to give you an idea, divide 250 by 3 and it's 83,000. I mean, not that we have to do that, but
But spring is generally heavier, is that right?
Yep, and there's some of these requests that are in the spring. They're coming earlier this year.
Yeah.
So some of these that you haven't quite seen are year long. Some of them are actually in April and those months, but that doesn't mean we won't see an influx, because historically that's when we do see is winter quarter we'll see a lot.
We have some groups who came last year who knew we ended up increasing the supplemental funding last year, but some of the groups who came last year or have historically come earlier in the year, knowing that we still have funding available and it's less of a concern at that point.
Can I ask a quick question?
Not yet. In a moment, we're going to jump to public comment, and then you can. Yep.
Oh, I can sit.
Yep. Oh yeah, you can sit there. Yep.
So any further discussion on whether or not to vote on supplemental funding request 1902 tonight?
I don't really think we really necessarily have to tonight, especially if we do, it doesn't really make a huge impact till the PBAC meeting, which is the 13th.
Yeah, I would agree
so
with
I
that.
think we should just like give ourselves maximum time, just like all the other funding requests, and vote on it then.
Not that I'm saying contrary to that, but I think the reason they were requesting, and I'll look to the gallery to comment, was more for just their own financial kind of awareness of whether there was a likelihood of it being approved or not. I mean, I believe they're going regardless. It's already been paid for at that point. But I totally understand where you're coming from as well. I at least wanted that put out there.
Yeah, I'm done.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
No other discussion. We'll move on to public comment. Is there any public comment?
So quick comment on that. Isn't there a recommendation that we are here for the voting?
You don't have to be.
Okay, so I know in the
yeah.
past years it's been highly recommended that we were here for the voting, and none of us will be here next
Yeah.
Wednesday as we are on the conference. So that was one of our primary reasons for asking for a vote this week.
Totally understandable. Yeah, we've strongly encouraged, as the committee can attest to, making sure they're asking all their questions while you all here to present, because it's not a requirement to be here during deliberation. But no, thank you for clarifying.
And I will notify the email on the packet when whatever the decision is from the S&A committee to the PBAC committee, so that you'll get an email confirmation. Okay.
Any other public comment? Yeah.
Hello. So as you may see on your, Jen, our other big ask for the year, your Women in Jazz Day. Just in a quick nutshell, if you've ever seen a professional group of musicians, you may have noticed that in the jazz idiom of an instrumentalist, it's a very male-dominated field, with less than 1% being female. And then college is 10%, high school 25%, etc. And so we had it last year. We have a full day addressing the issue, and the reason it's kind of expensive is because one of the ways we address this issue is by giving people really awesome role models, which means we bring in a professional female clinician for every single instrument/voice, which is 8. I have been planning this event since August, as it takes a long time to find the right 8 people to bring, to find out a price that's reasonable, and to organize everything. These people are like, oh, I can fit it in between my New York and my India tour right there in Ellensburg. And a lot of these people, some of these people have been waiting for a couple months for me to start the contract process, which I don't want to start drafting contracts until I know if we're going to be able to put on this event, because our club definitely does not have that much money. So I would like to request, if I know you can't change what day you request money on, but I was wondering if you would be able to deliberate on how much to approve on the day that we ask for the money, just because an event of this scale, we have 7 contracts that need to be written, 5 people flying from out of state, possibly 1 even international, and it's just a whole event of organization. We can't start a lot of it until we know, are we actually going to be able to afford this event, or do we have to start making cuts? So even though I know it's in April, as I said, these things take a long time, and it's entirely student organized. So I'd just like to request if you would help us make the process on our end a little bit less stressful. I don't know how you answer that. That's my
Thank you. Yep. If you would like to, we can discuss and deliberate.
Eric.
Again, I want to reiterate that I think we should maintain regular order and follow the process of 1 week being the presentation, the next week voting. Although, is it possible to move it to our presentation day instead of being the 20th, being the 14th or the 7th?
So to answer that, I'm going to kind of look at Joey. Usually what I would do is I put them in the queue of the order that they come in. But Can they do that?
If the committee would like to make so I'll answer twofold. One, to answer your question and then make another point related to that. If the committee would like to move them up ahead of the other requests that would come in, the committee could make that decision. Again, I think it goes back to a similar piece when we're talking about procedure, that you may see other groups coming in and requesting to be moved as well, since they're in there. But that would be the hard part, because looking at the agenda, because roughly we plan out the agenda again to make sure we have a set time for us to have these. And knowing that if they were the ones right before, it would still be a pretty packed agenda, but there's 2 other people ahead of them who are also on the next week. So they're presenting on the 14th. The voting would be on the 28th. Because of that Thanksgiving holiday, we don't meet that week. To touch on the other piece, and this is not a recommendation, or I don't have an opinion one way or the other, but simply from the standpoint of open public meeting pieces, if you all were to make the decision that you all vote to go contrary to what our bylaws are, to have the presentation and voting in the same night, for the public comment piece, that would be better, in my opinion, if that was decided ahead of time, because that would be publicized on the agenda as well in advance for people to be aware. As I mentioned during training, that's part of the concern when we make the change the night of, is then groups aren't able to be made aware. Alex can't get feedback from student government if needed, or things along those lines within that to provide specific comment. So while I would typically not encourage us to do that, if we were to do things well in advance to be able to publicize that, knowing you all would have to vote, that would be a little bit better. But again, I'm not necessarily encouraging one way or the other.
And to comment on that, partly because I have looked at all these requests that are in the queue, it could potentially create a precedence of quite a few different people coming through, because there's actually events in here that are before April that are requesting, and they have that have been submitted before those dates. So just as a piece of information, and I can share all the supplementals if you guys would like a preview of the things I have seen. But I think we need to think about the rest of how that could impact the rest of the requests.
Greg?
Yeah, it just feels like we should stick with our rules and move forward. I don't know, do you have a date for your Jazz Day?
It's April 6th, but as I said, this is a student organized full day, and knowing last year, the reason we submitted our paperwork later is because it took from mid-August until the 29th of October to find our 8 clinicians, and there's just so much planning that goes into this. This event was attended by over 100 people from all over the state, in addition to Central students last year, and it would make it easier, especially with the breaks, to know sooner rather than later, so we can get the ball rolling. I know that you aren't allowed to put us on an earlier meeting, but I was just requesting if you'd be willing to vote on how much to allocate that day. That would be helpful.
So we can move though to get that onto the 7th, so they present on the 7th. Can we not?
Well, I think what Domi is saying is that if they present on the 14th, to vote on the 14th, and if you vote on the 14th, it could go to the PBAC on the November 27th. So it would give about 2 extra weeks of time. So it would really be, this is the date she's asking to change. She's asking to present and vote at the same time.
Can we just make it so she presents the 7th and then we can vote 14th? Is that what you're?
If you do that, that was going back to what we were talking about, is we'll have a lot of other, that's how do we manage that?
To answer very simply, yes, you as a committee could make that decision. The part that I touched on though is that would be moving that up ahead of the 2 people who are in front of them. So be mindful just of precedent that may set of having those. You all do have the ability to make that request. It may make that meeting, it would make that meeting longer for you all as well, just to be mindful of that. But my bigger concern is the fact that maybe it's jumping ahead of other people who submitted earlier.
How would that affect the people that are ahead of them?
They would be pushed back.
Just pushed back. So.
Yeah, and I guess where I'm coming from is that this is not that this has really ever happened, but we could have 3 requests back out, and then all of a sudden, everybody gets shifted up. So even though I have earmarked that her presentation is going to be on the 14th, depending on how the 7th meeting goes, if there's people that have backed out, we really look at that at a week basis, not necessarily so many weeks out, but we wanted to make sure that we could capture everybody in this fall quarter.
So, in my understanding, just to like make it like clear across the board, is that for us to make sure that publicly we're keeping those records available, that tonight or to next week we can move to have the Gen Club's presentation and voting be on the same day. So that way they understand, the public has notification that we will also be voting on this the same day.
Yes, correct.
But then that wouldn't allow certain people to go back and get feedback from their constituents, if you will.
Eric?
Not to belabor the subject, but I really truly believe we need to maintain the regular order for fairness for all students, so no one is getting precedence, and nothing is creating precedence for future, not only our committee this year, but in future years.
I agree.
Any further public comment?
Quick comment that we noticed up here, the amount of money that we actually have as requesting, we submitted a revised request about a week ago that is actually a lower number than that was reflected in our correspondence. So I just want to make sure that you guys are voting on the revised number, which is actually lower, not higher, so that's good.
Yeah. Saving money already.
Yeah. Our airfare was actually way cheaper than we expected.
Look at that, 82,000.
And we also
So we just want to make sure you guys have that.
Thank you.
Thank you. We look forward to hearing from you next week.
Thank you.
Great. Last call for public comment.
This isn't really public comment,
Yeah.
but I do want to say, since this was our first business meeting, great discussion and questions from everyone. Again, I know you'll get a better feel too when we're deliberating next week on what things maybe we missed asking. As we go throughout the year, I try and ask those questions. It doesn't work successfully, just so you all know, as those who are on this committee before know. But again, I just want to point out, you all did a great job of asking questions, making sure we were attentive to that, and being responsive with that. So I do want to point that out.
Walk me through the process of maybe making the motion to get report backs onto our thing. So I just
that
make the
could be
motion
something
right now.
we as a committee can have the conversation, and if that's something the committee would like as a standard, you all can kind of make that decision and just vote on that, and we can send that information out to let groups know we would like a report back. We'd want to be specific on what that looks like. Or if there's a specific group, like you specifically want it from the big band tour of China and Taiwan, that can be part of the piece when we're doing the deliberation, that we're allocating X amount of funding, and this is part of the requirement, is that we would like a report back at whatever point in time within that. So it's really specific on whether you all want to do it as an overarching or specific to this. But it's something we can put on if we want to discuss next week, since that's when we're going to be deliberating on it. We can chat, and I'll add it kind of under the report piece at the beginning so people can think about.
I moved.
I have a question
on the
on
minutes.
Do you want the report backs to be a requirement to the funding release?
Yeah, it kind of depends on how the discussion goes. Because if people are like, oh, we want the report backs from everyone, then I'd you should ask them when they put in their funding request, make sure to add this information, how they can come back with, I don't know, whatever from whatever trip they did, and how
And I'll tell you,
share
some
that
of those report backs will look very different depending on the group. We've had a lot who will voluntarily come and just during public comments say, we want to let you know that we went, this was great, here's a few of the things. Others have brought a slideshow for us.
Well, then we'd set a time.
Yeah,
thing,
that's
too.
I mean, I was thinking that maybe we just generate a form, and it's a piece of paper, and it goes.
Just so there's a public
it's part of the website, so we're not, because I'm already looking at
Right.
all our time every Wednesday, and now we can start meeting on Mondays too for report backs.
Yeah. That's a good point too.
But it might really eat us up if we have it. But to have it as a paper report, minimum, but it could be more. So then we could read it at our leisure.
Would you recommend having specific questions already outlined for every?
That might. A simple guideline or something. Of how it went. There could be some. I'm sure there's some examples out there we can find.
Lacey.
Just a comment on the report backs. It takes an insanely long time for the students to get reimbursed. And I'm coming from the students in my office that are out $1,200. They're waiting for the PBAC committee to approve it. Then they've got to do this. And I love the idea, but if we start hindering that, I just don't want that to be a negative effect on the students. So as the students sitting at this table, what I'd like you guys to do is think about that, because if circuit counting is still holding on the money because the agenda's packed, they don't know what the form, where's the form filled out, who's assigned that form, it could create a lot of issues.
Okay.
And another piece is sometimes the parents are actually the ones that are out of the money.
I don't want to get in the way of like the money, for sure.
I mean, I could definitely pass those phone calls off to Brandon and student involvement.
I'm probably better than.
But I love the idea, but if it can be something that, I don't know if I have a good solution, but just there are cons and pros to everything, and one of the cons to having more requirements is that it slows down the reimbursement process.
And maybe it's not tied to reimbursement. Maybe it's just a voluntary thing. Here's a report, and maybe it goes into consideration next time that group comes forward. They didn't fill out a report, or something.
Yeah.
But it's not tied to it.
I think
I
that's
agree with you.
right.
That's crazy. We were going
I like
to do
that.
it something simple, but
And talk over.
sorry.
You're the chair. You can talk.
Okay, so Joey and then Tanya.
I am going to, for the sake of, and knowing we're going to plan on it, just so you all know, I'm putting it on the agenda for next week for us to discuss. So that way we have time, and if there is any other feedback or things for us to look into, we can have a more intentional conversation about it next week. So it'll be on there.
Talk about it next week. Sounds good to me.
Last call for public comment. Seeing none, we'll entertain a motion for adjournment. King moves. Dane seconds. Any discussion?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Never know.
Seeing none, all those in favor of adjournment? All those opposed? Any abstaining? Seeing none, this meeting is adjourned at 7:12.
And there's pizza left takeout.
Oh yeah.
Hey Joey,
Yes.
did you want me to call Alex and ask him if he was going to rejoin our meetings?
Yeah, because like student government official that you talked,
Oh,
you
yeah.
said Alex, but it's actually Kane.
What? You called him Alex?
You called Kane Alex.
Probably because
earlier.
you saw Alex sitting next to you and not.
Oh, when I was like, what
Somebody
are we
else picked
talking
these
about?
up,
Yeah,
I
I
thought.
was.
Yeah, we.
That's right. I was like,
Yeah, I kind of
that's why I
pile
was
them up
confused.
at
I was
the
like,
end.
what are we